What's good YouTube? What's good Instagram? Welcome to my next video on Sterling on Sinemas. That is Cinemas with an S. And today I'll be giving you my review on Spider-Man as part of my Marvel Mondays series. The Spider-Man movie directed by Sam Raimi. It is such an honor to get to this part of the series because this has been this has defined my love for Marvel ever since. But anyway, if you are new to this video or new to this playlist at least, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment on the section below, and most importantly, watch it to the very end. And the same thing if you're on Instagram, especially if you're on Instagram. Don't forget to follow, like, share it with your friendly neighborhood friends and family, and most importantly, watch. And if you don't, that's okay. My spider sense will let me know whether you subscribed or followed or not. Let's get to it. So, 2002 Spider-Man. We are all familiar with this origin story, whether you've seen the movie or not. That is how popular the Spider-Man character is. He's so popular, you don't have to love comic books to be familiar with the guy. So, Spider-Man centers on student Peter Parker, played by Tobey Maguire, who, after being bitten by a genetically altered spider, gains superhuman strength and the spider-like ability to climb to any surface or wall, ceiling, whatever, you name it. He vows to use his abilities to fight crime, coming to the understanding of the words of his beloved Uncle Ben. With great power comes great responsibility. Here's my take on the story of the first live-action Spider-Man movie. First of all, it is always great to revisit this classic cinematic take on everybody's favorite Marvel superhero. Like, if you were to ask me what Marvel movie I have seen a bunch of times, this would be my first pick. I would always say Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie. It wasn't only my first movie in general, it was my first Marvel movie, and it was the first time I was exposed to this Marvel universe. Nostalgia aside, the first Spider-Man movie was such an amazing treat to take in because the movie helps comic book readers and moviegoers fall in love with Spider-Man's world and how exhilarating it is and sometimes hard to be Spider-Man. Now, the story is very straightforward, which is great. It doesn't take long nor too little to introduce Spider-Man and the responsibility he must take into his sticky gloves. Like, straight off the bat, the origin takes a decent pace to help us love the relatable, awkward side of Peter Parker while helping us getting warmed up to the hype and pumped action of Spider-Man. This is not a huge surprise, but the theme of Spider-Man movie and just throughout the entire mythology of the character is power and how to be responsible with it. In the case of the film, we get to see how the longer he is Spider-Man, the greater the responsibility of his identity becomes. It causes him to consider the people around him and what would happen to them. Because, like they say, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Because if your friends come within the same range as your enemies, they're going to get hurt too. The characters had to put on my full outfit for this. The movie takes the proper amount of time for us to love each and every moment between the characters in the movies and helps to establish a lot of relationships. To start off, Tobey Maguire's is just superb as Spider-Man and awkward as Peter Parker, just like he should be. Now, I know I said Tom Holland is my favorite just because he's in the MCU, but this is the one. This is the one that started it for me. This is my Spider-Man, and anybody else who was born around the 2000s, this is our Spider-Man. If it were not for him, we wouldn't love Spider-Man. Everybody is familiar with the origin story of this character, like I said, and how he was bitten by a genetically radioactive spider and it caused him to basically do everything a spider can. The process he goes through to become Spider-Man and to swing in that identity is very entertaining. He gets himself involved in amateur wrestling, which not only helps us to get a taste of his powers, his spider powers, but is a defining moment for the character. Hence, great power, great responsibility. Kirsten Dunst, I said it right, Kirsten, not Kristen, Kirsten. Kirsten Dunst's Mary Jane Watson is still stunning to look at to this day, with her irresistible complexion and personality. J.K. Simmons is J. Jonah Jameson. Look, let me tell you something. Hold on. I know I said I'm putting my outfit on for this section. Let me tell you something. J. Jonah Jameson J.K. Simmons' portrayal of this guy may have not have a lot of screen time in this one, but he always stole the show whenever he was on screen. Like, if y'all have not seen this trilogy in a long time, y'all forgot how great this man was on the road. Like, he pretty much becomes J. Jonah Jameson. No, screw that. He is J. Jonah Jameson. You know, like I said, before Robert Downey Jr., before Heath Ledger, some of these actors just cannot be replaced. Anyway, Aunt May and Uncle Ben played a big part of who Peter Parker is, and not to mention the iconic speeches given by Uncle Ben about great power and great responsibility. Now, speaking of power, Willem Dafoe's portrayal of both Norman Osborn and Green Goblin is certainly a memorable one. He captures the insanity of the character and was the right villain to start out with, considering he represents power and irresponsibility of that power. See, the Green Goblin is portrayed more as a second personality than just a completely changed identity. Because in the comics, the Green Goblin is pretty much a hallucination of Norman Osborn's until he becomes real. And this is kind of what we see here. It is a perfect opposite to Peter Parker because we see Norman Osborn follow the voice of the Green Goblin to determine what he does with this power, while Peter Parker, even after the death of his Uncle Ben, follows the voice he remembers in the words that were spoken to him on that very day. Those are the words that he lets to define his movement as a superhero. And I think these words right here are a big deal, because it's a big deal for the Spider-Man and a huge part why we love Spider-Man, because, you know, one of the most generic things about superheroes, you know, you see them with a bright leather costume and they just save the day, but they don't really have a principle or a code that they follow. And this is why heroes like Spider-Man and Batman are great, because they're complex and they stand on something and not just some guy in a cape who's fighting crime and doing good and wearing a mask. So yeah, the philosophy behind with great power comes great responsibility really comes a long way. You just have to wait. Rotten Tomatoes gives Spider-Man from 2002 a 90% score. Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man film will always go on to be a nice introduction into this live-action world of the Wallcrawler. Everything about this movie is top-notch. The action is amazing, the origin story is memorable, the characters are spectacular, and the romance between Peter Parker and Mary Jane is beautiful. I will give Spider-Man 9.5 Essos out of 10. That's how much I really love this movie. Now, I'm going to be talking about a lot of things in this trilogy later on, so I can save some information for the other reviews, like the villains and the casting and many other things. So you guys have a good night. I will see you guys Wednesday. Yes, I know I mentioned this already, but if you follow me on Instagram, you know I sent out a story saying that I will not be posting anything tomorrow. I know, I'm sorry. I was looking forward to it. But yes, I do. I'm not going to be able to post anything tomorrow from the Pixar series. I was going to post Monsters Incorporated, but I have other priorities to catch up on. However, if I happen to finish all my priorities before tomorrow is over, I will, if I can, squeeze in a review. So you never know. So stick around. But other than that, you guys have a good night. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.